This is Perspectivas Latinas, a community service of CAN TV. I'm your host, Juan Carlos Hernandez. Pilsen Neighbors Community Council has been a key in giving a voice to the community since the 1950s. Here to talk about their work and annual festival, we have Ana Padilla, Gardenia Rangel, and Claudia Marchan. Let's start off by talking about you individually. Ana?
I'm the business coordinator at Pilsen Neighbors Community Council, but I also do some organizing work around immigration. We have a small legal clinic, and we do some immigration cases, especially we focus on DACA students.
Mm-hmm.
So
Deferred action?
Deferred action,
Mm-hmm.
so we work with those students and making sure they fill out their paperwork and it's submitted. And it's something that's affordable. We had been seeing that a lot of lawyers were charging up to $5,000.
Taking advantage of
Taking advantage of the community.
Wow. Gardenia?
My name is Gardenia Rangel, and I've been involved with Fiesta del Sol, I would say close to 14 years.
14 years.
This year as both a volunteer and then as part of staff and then back again as part of the leadership.
Vamos a quinceañera.
Soon, we need a big celebration for that. I'm co-chairing the Fiesta del Sol along with my colleague Tania Cabrera. She couldn't be here. And I'm also the co-founder of the Recorrido del Sol, which is our 5K walk to support scholarship funds for documented students. And so I also worked as a staff person for about 5 years, and I'm back. They can't get rid of me as the co-chair of Fiesta del Sol.
Great. Claudia?
Yes, Claudia Marchan, and I've been with Pilsen Neighbors Community Council for about 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Also started as a volunteer and now as staff. I've been doing a little bit of everything with the Fiesta del Sol scholarship when I started, and then some community organizing around education, and now I organize Fiesta del Sol.
Let's start off by talking about what you do overall as an organization. It came up twice already, DACA education. How do you work in that part of the community work that you do? Do you organize people around education? Do you hold meetings? Do you go to schools? Are you part of local school councils? What exactly do you do?
Sure, I can share a little bit about that. Pilsen Neighbors Community Council has been in existence since 1954.
Mm-hmm.
It started out as a, not as a social service agency. It was more of a, there were some workshops, there were some, help to individual families. In the 1970s, the organization started changing and started becoming more of a community organizing institute,
Mm-hmm.
and now that's what we do.
What brought about that change?
The influx of Mexican immigrants, particularly into Pilsen.
Because back in the 50s, it was still Czechs, Poles,
Correct.
Italians, I imagine.
Eastern Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Hence the name Pilsen.
Yes, correct. And now the neighborhood has been changing again. In the last 5 years, there's been a lot of changes. People moving out, people moving in, gentrification, correct. And so the issues that we work on, the community organizing issues that we work on, are the ones that the community feels that need to be worked on. So those issues right now are education being the number one issue with the schools in Pilsen and outside of Pilsen in like Metro Chicago. Immigration, civil rights of immigrants. We have a jobs and transportation. We also do healthcare. We're currently working with a navigator for the Affordable Care Act, and also
Obamacare.
Yes, Obamacare.
Mm-hmm.
And also workforce development. So those are the 4 key areas.
And if I may add also, Pilsen Neighbors was very instrumental in getting a lot of the organizations that are, well known and established in Pilsen, such as Alivio Medical Center,
Correct.
Really?
Esperanza School, El Valor, Benito Juarez was one of our biggest accomplishments.
The high school?
Yes, Orozco Academy.
Even Arturo Velázquez Institute.
Arturo Velázquez Institute, which is
Which
part
is part
of the city colleges,
yes.
which is my 9 to 5, and so and also launching the scholarship fund. I know that at one point we gave out about 50 scholarships to students attending universities throughout the nation, actually, as long as they lived in our Chicago metro residential area. And so, and again, we paved the way for other organizations, and we are at the table as advisory board members for a number of organizations that are still in Pilsen. We also are involved with the local schools.
Local schools.
Wow.
We'll be
Particularly
celebrating our 60th anniversary this year for our organization.
Or are you
Yes.
throwing a big gala or a big party? Or
Yes.
is it just Fiesta del Sol? Because that's huge in and of itself.
No, we will. We're actually working on a couple of networking events. We have a great partnership with DePaul University. They're holding a lot of our history, a lot of our archives at the university, and I think this will be a year to kind of do an unveiling of that archiving and some nice networking events there, along with some kind of gala in October. We're still in the works.
Still in the works.
Yes.
Again, you've been very active in helping raise these schools, create these schools, having the community have a say in what happens in these schools. Is that how it works, or how it's worked since the 50s, or actually 70s? How is that? Do you have, because you have these education summits, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
tell me about that and how that works.
The Education Summit, I believe this is now the 9th annual Education Summit. It started 9 years ago with a couple of schools in Pilsen voicing their opinion on what used to be a parent conference from CPS that was not provided in Spanish. And as you know, a lot of the parents in Pilsen, in the Pilsen schools, are, their first language is Spanish. So they were really disheartened, upset, that this wasn't available.
They were essentially excluded.
Yes, yes. And so they brought this to the Pilsen Education Task Force. Pilsen Neighbors is the lead organization of the task force that brings in about 20 to 30 nonprofits and schools together once a month. And so we decided to do something about it. And the outcome was a Pilsen Education Task Force, and with the key goal of educating parents on how they should be involved in their child's education from pre-K to post-secondary education.
And we have events throughout the year. That's kind of like the culmination leading up to. I mean, we have workshops throughout the year.
Once a month, and when does this summit take place usually?
Sure, it's in October,
It's in
usually
October.
the 3rd week of October,
Okay.
and it is always held, or it has historically been held at Benito Juarez High School.
And these workshops you're talking about?
Well, they're
Gabriela?
held throughout the year, depending on our leadership, depending also on
The
the
parents
number
that
of
we work with.
the parents and what they want. They may be as formal as a education summit, but they're also informal conversations and dialogues with the community about the college application process, which is something that I'm a part of. We've had Café con Pan just at Casa Juan Diego
Right.
to talk to parents about navigating the application process and how they can support their daughter or son as they apply to college, because a lot of our students are first generation and are also the first in their families to attend college, and so they don't know. And so I wear two hats because I'm very passionate about higher ed. I went to a private institution, and so I share about my experience. And had I known what I know now 10 years ago when I was entering college, 10 years ago or so, then I would
Or so.
I would have started
Let's
at
say
a
5.
community college and work on getting those transfer scholarships. And so what I do is I sell education. Doesn't matter if it's nonprofit, for-profit, community college, private, you name it, as long as you're in school. And a lot of us have similar pathways to college, where we were the first to go to college. We didn't know how to navigate the system, and we made our errors, and we live and we learn. And so what we do is we try to humanize and demystify the process, and especially to our parents. I have working class parents, they still work in factories, and I'm able to relate to parents in that manner because they don't see it as an option because they can't afford it. It's like, well, señora and señor, there's scholarships and there's grants, and if you qualify for financial aid, you may even end up getting money for books and things of that nature.
And I think some of the work in terms of the organizing work we're doing, one of our education organizers, Fernando, he is working with the Academia de Padres. And so it's like the Academia de Padres not only focuses on the education of the children, but it's also the education of the parents. We have
Like she said, demystifying, so they're aware of
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah, but also, working on the parents. We're working with National Louis about, providing workshops and classes for them, and then we're also working on probably developing into more like accredited classes for the parents.
Wow.
So it's like a bridge.
That's exciting.
Like a bridge program for parents, that it's important for them to understand how the education system works for their children, but it's also important for themselves.
Yeah.
So it's
To
not about their
advance.
children, it's also about making decisions for themselves and improving their lives.
Yeah, because I think it's become far more common now. Learning is a lifelong process.
Process.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's not one and done. You know, we think we go to school and we're done, but it's constant development.
And
Right.
age, you know, there's no discrimination in terms of age, and I think
For
a
sure.
lot of parents that
Mhm.
come from Latin American countries, age it is, you know, you're like, oh, you're too old to be in school, or you know, I have my children, and I think in the United States, it's, you know, I remember my freshman year, my one of my friends was like 80-some years old, and she was finishing school. So I
Wow.
think,
So you guys would hang out and do homework?
and she was older than the professor. So you know, it's
But
about
they bring a life experience.
Yes.
Right.
life
And
experience.
it's very diverse. And I think that's one of the highlights for me, seeing some of these parents start, you know, just at a informal meeting, transition into the Academy of Parents and Leadership, and then I see them at Arturo Velasquez Institute or at Daly College, and it's the case a lot of the times where they like, hey, you know, I remember you, and I'm like, oh, sí, señora, señor. So I think it's a great way for us to not only empower our students, but also our parents.
Wow. But as you talk about education, I keep thinking undocumented folks, because helping undocumented individuals navigate that and getting into college and getting financial aid is still a challenge. How do you handle that? Because they don't qualify for any federal or state help.
So the most important thing, I think, is about educating the students and the parents that education, no matter if you're undocumented, is possible. I think I hear a lot of people, I still hear people, they say like, I'm undocumented, you know, I can't go on. You know, high school is the last grade I can attend, and it's about, it's an option.
Right.
The
The cost
state
is
of-
pretty high.
yeah.
Mhm.
But the state of Illinois has in-state tuition for undocumented students. So, I mean, the cost is, you know, still high, but it's not impossible. And I think we have the Fiesta del Sol scholarship. We award, you know, it varies every year, but I think last year we gave about 14 scholarships. We gave about 14 scholarships. Predominantly the students that do receive our scholarship are undocumented.
And it's a competitive process. They have to do an essay and an
Yes,
it
interview.
is.
Yes.
So the we have a deadline to submit transcripts. It's based on, you know, some is GPA, but it's also need. So we look at the need of the
Community
students.
service is a big
And
one
so
as well.
what I
I'm sorry.
advise,
Go ahead.
Sorry,
You guys
no,
were
I was
talking
gonna
at the same
say
time.
it's also community service is a
Community
big
service.
emphasis
That's
that we
right.
put on our scholarship program.
Yes.
Okay.
and
Carmen?
what I advise students, because I get a lot of, you know, knocking on my door from undocumented students because they know I'm so involved with, you know, within the nonprofit organizations. And I tell them, look for alternate, you know, funding sources. Don't depend just on financial aid. Just because one place closes a door doesn't mean that there's other, you know, there isn't other options. There are.
Right.
And so we actually have a list of other scholarships that are open to any student regardless of
Their
financial aid eligibility
and
requirements.
their legal status as well.
Yes. And so, you know, it's about, again, you know, breaking down those barriers and informing students that there are other options. And that's why, you know, I'm a huge advocate of community college, because I think that it's reachable, it's affordable, and it's, you know,
It's a huge stepping
accredited.
stone.
Yes,
Right?
yes. And then they start to network with other students, and they start to learn about other scholarships that are out there. And I think it's pretty important, a very important role in our, a very important role that we play.
Yes.
In that.
And I think they also have the opportunity to build their GPA. And then a lot of private institutions also provide scholarships, and it's not only like you don't have to go the public way. I mean,
Right.
it's you know, you have great universities, but a lot of the times you have private institutions that will provide you like a full ride. So it's also about informing them of those
The
those
options that are
opportunities.
available.
Yes, we actually, I'm a part of the University Roundtable, and so we're always thinking, you know, we're thought partners in this. You know, we want to see our future generations succeed. We want to empower them with the tools that they need, and so we, you know, oftentimes talk about, you know, exceptions that are being made. And so another word of advice that I tell students is ask. Even
Right.
if on the
Right,
website
right,
it says, you know, need to be permanent resident or, you know, whatever it says, get on the phone and ask. You never know. There may be an exception. They may have a limited or another pool of funds.
Yeah,
So
that's
always
important.
ask.
There is somebody within a university or college that does have that information, and they'll provide it.
And then we have the documented, when they call the students that have the defer action.
Yeah.
You know, that changes a lot as well in terms of how the university and what source like resources they could provide for them. Like they could offer work study, because now these students do have
The ability to work,
the
right?
ability to work. So, you know, now that we have the defer action, it also changes, you know, and all the schools are different in terms of, but, you know, it's also about bringing that up. I'm able to work. I do have a working permit, so that's also changing for students.
One thing, though, that I have heard is if you're undocumented, even if you're on deferred action or have applied for that, is you should not fill out a FAFSA, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Right. Why is that?
That's part of the education, I think, that needs to, even now at this point, 2 years after, almost to the 2-year anniversary of DACA, is that information that needs to go out there, need to educate our community. So because the students, DACA provides not permanent legal, but temporary legal status and a working permit. That's it. There is no federal benefits, any kind. No, you know, any kind of financial aid, and definitely cannot fill out a FAFSA. There are a lot of things being done. I think through the University Roundtable, we're working a lot with MALDEF, and they are
That's great to hear.
becoming very, very good at trying to get more resources, like Anna mentioned, for these DACA students. One of the resources that are coming through is, are we going to be able to get our students into the workforce once, for example, in the areas of healthcare. The areas of healthcare are, you know, there are different certifications that you have to go through, different state laws, and because these students are not allowed to work, how does that, you know, affect them, and how do they transition, and will they actually be able to work in the healthcare field? Will they be able to work in a hospital?
And education, because you have a
Also,
lot of
right,
teachers, you know, a lot of students that graduated with teaching certificate, you know, degrees, and so it's like, how do they transition into those, and how do we work?
Make sure that the state also, because there's a lot of follow-up work that needs to be done and connected from federally to the states, where the states have to realize that these are now the changes, and they have to make those changes to their laws, you know, state laws. So we're getting a lot of, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done there, but there's a lot of positive changes coming.
And I think it's all, it goes back to education and how we talk about defer action. I have a lot of people that come to the office and they say, I want to apply for the DREAM, the Dreamer. And so the DREAM Act, and it's like, it's not the DREAM Act. That's one of the first things that I have to tell them. It's not the DREAM Act. This is something that is good for 2 years. It doesn't lead you to permanent residency, and you explain to the parents, because a lot of times you see that the parents are, you know, bringing their children, and they're like, the DREAM Act, and it's not the DREAM Act. You know, and you have to explain of, okay, it's not about only helping them fill out the paperwork, and explaining to them what are the restrictions in terms of the defer action.
And how they can also help and join our task forces to continue pushing for civil rights of immigrants, for immigration reform.
So for something more permanent versus...
And for more people, right?
More people.
Which has been the challenge, unfortunately.
We also have partnerships with a lot of churches across the, I would say, across the state. Through our network, we belong to the Gamaliel Foundation, and so we're connected across the state and actually across the country.
Across the nation, and also it's also an international foundation now, which allows us to not only be able to work locally and state, but also on a federal level. So when we're working on immigration, we're working on immigration on a federal level with the Gamaliel Foundation.
With 17 other states, organization.
And what countries?
South Africa and
Europe.
Europe.
All the entire EU? Or?
No, it's
no,
Wales, I think.
it's
Wow. Wow, we really went into it, became an education
Yes.
and some of your education work. Tell me about what you've done in healthcare, and then we'll get to Fiesta del Sol because we do need to give that some time. Just briefly tell me about that, please.
So the campaign for healthcare for the longest time has been Healthcare for All. And our biggest partner has been Alivio Medical Center, which is a very local partner, but also a partner that works on advocacy on the federal level. And now that we have the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, we felt that it was a need in the community where we had to participate in that. So we do have an IPC, or a navigator, at our office, and we're doing that kind of, person to person, helping people get their insurance. At the same time, we're still working on, healthcare for all and the next steps to make sure that this is what the community needs and that everyone gets taken care of.
Right, because undocumented folks, again,
Are excluded.
are excluded or
Correct.
exempt, right? They're essentially excluded. They're from Obamacare.
Yes. So we have a lot of work to do.
A lot, we certainly do. Now let's talk about Fiesta del Sol, its history and how it's become so big and a huge focal point of summers in Chicago.
Yes, definitely. So I'm speaking as a co-chair, but also as a product of Fiesta del Sol. As I mentioned earlier, I started as an intern working with within the college fair, and learn, to appreciate all the things that we do on the level of education. But Fiesta del Sol was founded as a celebration for securing funds for for Benito Juarez High School. And so once we secured those funds, we had a celebration, and it was called Fiesta del Sol. It started as a one-block, street festival with a couple of vendors.
Block party, essentially.
Yes, it was a block
block
party.
party.
And now it's grown to one of the largest alcohol, tobacco, sponsorship free events in the nation. And it's very family oriented, and we have educational pavilions throughout the fiesta. So it's not just a place to come for enchiladas, and they have some really good enchiladas.
And music.
And tacos and music. We also have a partnership with Alivio Medical Center, so we have a healthcare pavilion. We also bring in 10 different universities on site to Fiesta del Sol to provide information on the application process. They also have an opportunity to do, on the spot interviews.
Really?
We have representatives from the advising side, from financial aid.
That's awesome.
We have different organizations such as the Resurrection Project having information on, housing opportunities
La
for
Casa.
students, La Casa. And again, it's very family oriented, and it's a one-stop shop type of event. And we also support the arts, La Cultura. We have an arts and culture pavilion where we showcase, local and also Mexican artisans. I know at one point we flew in some artisans, the Rebozo,
From
folks
San Luis
from
Potosí.
San Luis Potosí.
Really?
And
Those
so that was
famous
really
ones.
neat.
What pueblo is that? Santa Maria?
Santa Maria.
Santa
Yes,
Maria.
Santa Maria. We've also partnered up with, local artists to showcase their art. And so we always make sure to bring that cultural piece to our fiesta.
It sounds huge.
Imagine 3 stages. I think
You have 3 stages.
it varies
Yes.
from year to year depending on our
Last year we had
sponsorship.
3, actually 4.
Four.
4 stages.
4 stages.
Yes.
Oh, what kind of music?
So it's the
Everything
main stage.
from Mexican regional to Spanish
rock
pop and
and
house music, and
So if I want to dance norteña, techno,
that's the place to go.
Cumbia.
Yes,
cumbia,
everything.
You'll find it.
Sonideros. We also have
all at the same time?
Different stages.
Different
yes.
They're far
areas.
enough,
Yeah.
They're
Yes.
far enough from each
Fiesta
other.
del
where
Sol
you
is like a
can-
mile long. It's like 8
About a
blocks.
mile long.
Wow.
And then so we also have the carnival rides. We
What's your
also
favorite
have.
ride?
Talk to me about enchiladas. I'm all
Favorite
about the
food.
Favorite food. We have like the typical Ferris wheel. That's always a lot of fun,
Yeah.
and we always, get on there and take a crowd shot. So that's always really neat.
I've never had time to get on the
Right.
rides at Fiesta.
You're working.
I'm working.
But you do eat. So what is your favorite food at Fiesta?
Enchiladas. I would say enchiladas is one of my favorite foods.
Enchiladas?
Yes, yes. Enchiladas.
You don't have like
tacos.
carnival food, like funnel cakes and that?
Oh
Yes,
yeah.
we
Yeah,
have
yeah,
a couple of
churros.
burgers and
Yeah,
churros.
And
churros.
Churros.
It's a big
Yes,
thing.
and then so can I just add something else about Fiesta del Sol is that we also,
Sorry, I got distracted by food.
yes, it happens. We hire a lot of our community youth to help us with the
Yes.
logistics behind Fiesta del Sol.
That's great to hear.
But not only are they working for a stipend, they're actually learning all the inner workings of our
Job
organization.
skills.
They have professional interviews, they work in teams, they also have individual tasks to fulfill. They're, our future generation of leaders, and I think that I've heard many stories from students who started as a SOL team member, evolved into a civilian security, and then are now police officers or in the education field because of the exposure that they got at Fiesta del Sol with our committee.
How does that process work? If, let's say, I'm a high school student or a college student, or even, do you even take junior high students?
Yes, as long as we
Yes.
have
15 and
a
up, I
waiver
think.
14.
for students 14 and over, because it's only 4 hours per day,
Okay.
and then for the 5 days.
They
Because
go
we
to
do
your
the
website or
precept.
what?
Yes, they can go
Yes,
to our
go to our
website. They can
Facebook, a
visit
lot of-
us. They can find
do
us on Facebook as
walk-ins.
well.
Walk-ins.
Yes, and so we work a lot with the local schools.
Yeah, we
And
can.
how neat is that? That we're actually providing jobs for our students. It may not be much, but $200 for a student to get their school supplies, it helps out. And so I think that it gives them also a sense of independence because, hey, I have a job and I have to report on time.
They
and
put us on their resumes.
Yes.
We get
Oh,
calls
yes.
all the
Yeah,
time.
well, they should.
Yeah.
Yeah,
calls
so
all
it's,
the
it's always a lot of fun, and it's just so amazing to see these students go through the process of being the 14-year-old that helped out with the SOL team to now being this college graduate who is now joining our university roundtable or
Yes.
young professional roundtable or committee.
Wow, there's so much information we could keep talking about. This is all great to hear. Thank you so much for coming out today to share it with us.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you
me.
for the
for having
invitation.
us.
Thank you.
Perspectivas Latinas is a community service of CAN TV. If your nonprofit organization would like to work with CAN TV, call 312-738-1400 and ask for nonprofit services. Tune into Perspectivas Latinas for local issues and concerns every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. on CAN TV 21. I'm Juan Carlos Hernandez. Thank you for joining us.